My name is Rachel Morgan, and I'm 32. Just last Tuesday, my husband Kevin passed away suddenly from a heart attack. The shock hasn't gone away, and the pain is still so raw. When I called my parents, crying uncontrollably, my mom said, "We're celebrating Sophia's birthday right now. Can this wait until tomorrow?" My daughter, Lily, and I sat alone, holding each other as the world we knew fell apart. I never imagined my family would turn their backs on us during our darkest time, but what they did next was even worse. If you've ever felt abandoned by family when you needed them the most, I'd love to hear from you. Let's support each other. Kevin and I met when we were both in college at Northwestern University. I was struggling with economics, and he was the teaching assistant who would stay after class to help me. His patience was the first thing I noticed, followed by his laugh and the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled. We started dating, and he proposed to me on graduation day, hiding the ring in my diploma case. We were young when we married, just 23. Everyone told us we should wait and live a little, but I knew Kevin was the one I wanted to spend my life with. After his MBA, he got a great job at a financial advisory firm in Chicago. He quickly rose through the ranks, impressing everyone with his honesty and genuine care for clients. He wasn't just good with numbers, he was good with people. We spent 5 wonderful years together before we started trying for a baby. What we thought would be easy turned into years of heartbreak to miscarriages, endless doctor appointments, and one failed round of IVF. We were exhausted, both emotionally and financially. Just when we were discussing adoption, I found out I was pregnant with Lily. The pregnancy was tough, and I spent the last 2 months on bed rest. Kevin worked from home to take care of me, bringing me breakfast in bed, massaging my swollen feet, and reading books aloud to both me and our unborn daughter. When Lily was born, Kevin cried harder than I did, holding her as if she were made of glass. For 8 years, we were the family I had always dreamed of. Kevin coached Lily's soccer team, even though he knew nothing about soccer, and he never missed a school event or doctor's appointment. His calendar was filled with color-coded reminders about Lily's activities, and he made sure we were always together as a family. There were warning signs about his health that we ignored. Occasional chest pains he chalked up to stress, shortness of breath he blamed on being out of shape. The doctor told him his slightly high blood pressure was normal for a man in his 40s with a high-pressure job. Take aspirin, exercise more, cut back on sodium, was the advice we took to casually. Then, one Tuesday morning, everything changed. Kevin made pancakes shaped like dinosaurs for Lily, while I packed her lunch. He kissed us both goodbye, promising he'd be home early for Lily's art show. His last words to me were, "Don't forget to pick up real maple syrup, not that corn syrup stuff." It was such a simple, mundane conversation, but it was the last one I had with him. At 10:47 a.m., my phone rang. It was Amanda, Kevin's assistant. Her voice was shaking so badly I could barely understand her. "Rachel, Kevin collapsed during a meeting. They're taking him to the hospital." I remember dropping my coffee mug, the sound of it shattering on the floor echoing in my ears. I called our neighbor Ellen to pick up Lily from school, then rushed to the hospital, breaking every speed limit. I prayed the whole way, hoping for a miracle, but I was too late. Kevin was pronounced dead at 11:23 a.m. They said it was a massive heart attack, and there was nothing anyone could have done. I don't know why, but I kept expecting Kevin to open his eyes, smile, and tell me this was all just a mistake. But it wasn't. The next few hours were a blur of paperwork, phone calls, and decisions I wasn't ready to make. Cremation or burial? What kind of service did he want? I didn't want to do any of this. I just wanted to curl up with Kevin one last time. The hardest part was going home and having to tell Lily that her dad wasn't coming back. I had no idea how to break the news. To an 8-year-old, how do you tell your daughter that the man who made dinosaur pancakes for breakfast isn't coming back? When Lily got in the car after school, she could tell something was wrong. "Where's Daddy?" she asked. "He promised to come to my art show tonight." I had to pull over because I couldn't focus on the road. I turned to face her and took her small hands in mine. "Lily, something really sad happened today. Daddy got very sick at work, and his heart stopped." She looked at me confused. "Can the doctors fix it?" The innocence in her voice crushed me. "No, sweetie. When someone's heart stops completely, the doctors can't fix it. Daddy died today." She just stared at me for what felt like forever, her blue eyes, just like Kevin's, trying to process the unthinkable. Then she asked, Does that mean Daddy isn't coming home ever? When I nodded, unable to speak, she let out a cry, this deep, primal sound that didn't even sound human. She threw herself into my arms, shaking with sobs. I want Daddy. I want my daddy. There was nothing I could do except hold her and cry with her. We sat there, parked by the side of the road, while life carried on around us. That evening, after Lily finally fell asleep in my bed, clutching Kevin's shirt, I sat in the bathroom and broke down completely. The pain in my chest was so intense it felt like I was being punched over and over. I needed my mom. I needed someone to comfort me, to tell me it would be okay. I called my parents. They had been married for 40 years and had been through tough times together. Surely, they would know what to say. My mother answered after a few rings. I could hear laughter and music in the background. Rachel, can I call you back? We're in the middle of Sophia's birthday dinner. I could barely get the words out. Mom, Kevin died this morning. He had a heart attack. He's gone. There was a pause, and I could hear her cover the phone, speaking to someone else. When she came back, her voice was more somber, but still distracted. Oh my goodness, that's terrible. Are you sure? Maybe there's been a mistake, I said. Mom, I saw his body. There's no mistake. She hesitated for a moment before saying, well, this is terrible, but we're in the middle of Sophia's 40th birthday party. Everyone's here, and we have the caterers. Can you handle it tonight? We'll come by tomorrow when things settle down. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My sister's birthday party mattered more than Kevin's death. My daughter's grief didn't seem to matter at all. My father then got on the phone. Rachel, this is awful news, he said, his tone strangely detached. Was Kevin's life insurance policy up to date? You should call the company first thing tomorrow. Not I'm coming right over. Or what can we do to help? No, just a question about life insurance. It felt like another stab to the heart. I couldn't keep my voice steady. I can't believe this is your response. My husband just died. Lily lost her father. And you're at a party right now? Rachel, listen. My father said in that patronizing tone he always used with me. Sophia has been planning this birthday for months. Everyone took time off work. We can't just leave. Be reasonable. Reasonable. As if grief follows any rules of reason, I hung up the phone, my mind spinning. Within minutes, my phone buzzed with text messages from friends, people who had somehow heard the news. Kevin's college roommate Brian, my colleague Jennifer, even an old high school friend Taylor, offering their condolences. Strangers showed more compassion than my own family. Then there was Ellen, our neighbor, who came over with a casserole. She sat with me at the kitchen table while I tried to make a list of people to notify. She offered to stay the night, but I declined. I needed to be alone with Lily, to figure out how we were going to live in this new world without Kevin. That first night was endless. Lily had nightmares and kept waking up calling for her daddy. I lay beside her, stroking her hair, telling her stories about Kevin, about how much he loved her, how brave he thought she was. Eventually, she fell into an exhausted sleep, but I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of Kevin's absence beside me. Morning came, and with it, the crushing reality that this wasn't a nightmare I could wake up from. This was our life now, a life without Kevin. And the worst part was, my own parents hadn't even offered to be there for us when we needed them the most. Kevin's funeral was set for that Saturday, for days after his death. Those days were a blur of arrangements, paperwork, and trying to comfort Lily while barely holding myself together. My parents called once briefly to ask what time the service started and if they should wear black or colorful attire. They didn't offer to help with arrangements or check on Lily. They didn't even ask how we were coping. The day of the funeral was bright and sunny, an ironic contrast to the heaviness in my heart. Lily insisted on wearing a blue dress because Daddy always said she looked like a princess in blue. I helped her braid her hair the way Kevin used to do on special occasions. We arrived at the funeral home an hour early to greet people. Kevin's colleagues from his financial firm arrived first, all somber in their dark suits. Many of them openly cried, not just because they had lost a coworker, but because they had lost a friend. They each took time to speak with Lily, sharing small stories about her father, stories she would treasure later. But my parents were late. They texted 20 minutes before the service was set to begin, saying they were running late due to traffic. They finally showed up, making a commotion as they found their seats in the front row, seats I had reserved for family. My mother hugged me briefly, her perfume overwhelming. The traffic was terrible, and Sophia had a hard time finding something appropriate to wear on such short notice, she explained. Short notice. As if Kevin's death was just another inconvenience. Throughout the service, I couldn't shake the feeling that my parents were completely detached. Sophia spent the service checking her phone, my father kept glancing at his watch, and my mother dabbled at her eyes, pretending to cry. Meanwhile, Kevin's colleagues and our friends were genuinely devastated. Their grief was real. The contrast was heartbreaking. Kevin's brother, Marcus, arrived from Japan just hours before the service. He looked exhausted, his eyes hollow from a 30-hour journey. He sat next to Lily, holding her hand throughout the service. When it was time for the eulogy, I wasn't sure I could do it. My legs felt like lead as I approached the podium, but when I looked at Lily small and brave, wearing her blue dress, I found the strength to speak. I talked about Kevin's kindness, his integrity, and his boundless love for his daughter. I talked about his terrible jokes that made us laugh and groan at the same time. I talked about how he always put family first. As I spoke, I glanced over at my parents, who were already gathering their things, eager to leave. The irony wasn't lost on me. During the reception at our house afterward, I overheard my father talking to my uncle James near the drinks table. Kevin was doing very well at that firm, my father said. The life insurance alone must be substantial. Rachel will be set for life. I could hardly believe my ears. I was barely holding it together, mourning the loss of my husband, and here was my father talking about money. It took everything in me not to confront him right there. I was too exhausted, too focused on making sure Lily was okay. So, I let it go for now. The reception was a blur. My mother and Sophia barely helped with anything, leaving most of the work to Kevin's colleagues' wives and my friends. They sat in the living room, accepting condolences as though they were the main mourners, while I moved through my own home like a ghost, thanking people for coming, accepting casseroles I would never eat. Kevin's parents, however, were a different story. Though devastated by the loss of their only son, they became models of genuine support. His mother, Diana, took over caring for Lily during the reception, making sure she ate and protecting her from well-meaning guests. His father, Robert, quietly helped organize the cleanup, staying until the last guest had left. The contrast between Kevin's family and my own was painful. I watched Kevin's parents support each other in their grief while also finding the strength to support me and Lily. I felt the absence of that same love from my own parents, a wound that cut deep. The will had been briefly mentioned by the funeral director, but I couldn't bear to think about legal matters yet. Kevin's friend Thomas, who had handled our estate planning, gently suggested we wait a week or two before discussing the details. No rush, he assured me. Everything is in order. You and Lily are well provided for. Kevin made sure of that. After the guests left, my parents and Sophia made quick excuses about needing to get back on the road before dark. They left with quick hugs and promises to call soon. They didn't offer to stay and help clean up. They didn't ask if Lily and I wanted company. They didn't acknowledge that this was our first night after saying goodbye to Kevin. Marcus and Kevin's parents stayed. Diana made up the guest room for Kevin's parents and the sofa for Marcus. We'll be right here if you need anything, Diana said, hugging me tightly. You're not alone, Rachel. Remember that. But as I lay in bed that night, listening to Lily's soft breathing beside me, I couldn't help feeling that, in one crucial way, I was very much alone. The people who should have been my support, my bedrock in a time of crisis, had proven themselves unworthy of that role. 2 weeks after the funeral, I was sitting at the kitchen table trying to make sense of our health insurance situation when the doorbell rang. Lily was at school, her first week back since losing her father. The teachers were keeping a close eye on her and sending me regular updates, for which I was grateful. I peered through the peephole and saw my parents standing on the porch. My father was straightening his golf shirt, and my mother was checking her reflection in a compact mirror. I hadn't spoken to them since the funeral. They'd texted a few times with generic messages like "thinking of you" or "hope you're doing okay," but there had been no real communication. I opened the door, not bothering to hide my surprise. I didn't know you were coming over. We thought we'd check in, my mother said as she brushed past me into the house. How's Lily? Is she at school? Good. We can talk openly. That should have been my first clue that this wasn't just a supportive visit, but I was too emotionally drained to pick up on the warning signs. They settled themselves into the living room while I automatically fell into the role of hostess, making coffee. When I brought in the mugs, My father was examining the new sound system Kevin had installed just a month before his death. Nice setup, he commented, running his hand along the speakers. Kevin had good taste in electronics. He did, I agreed. My voice flat. The simple past tense felt like a knife in my heart. After a few minutes of awkward small talk about Lily's school and my mother's garden club, my father cleared his throat, the familiar prelude to a serious conversation. Rachel, we wanted to talk to you about your situation. My situation? I asked, confused. Yes, your financial situation, my mother clarified, exchanging a look with my father. Now that you're adjusting to life without Kevin, her words trailed off as if she were stating a simple fact, not acknowledging the trauma we were still living through. I stared at them, still unsure of where this conversation was going. I'm not sure what you mean. My father leaned forward, his tone suddenly more serious. Kevin left us well provided for. We wanted to discuss the next steps. I didn't need to hear any more. My blood ran cold as I finally understood. They were asking for money. I felt my stomach turn. Are you asking me for money? My mother looked slightly embarrassed, but my father pressed on, his expression hardening. We thought, given Kevin's position at the firm and his life insurance policy, you might be in a position to help. Family helps family. The audacity of it. They were here, asking for money, only weeks after Kevin's death, when my world was still falling apart. I was speechless for a moment, the hurt and rage boiling over inside me. How much are you thinking? I asked, my voice hollow. My father, apparently unaware of the tone of my question, brightened. Well, we were thinking something substantial. Would make sense, maybe 50% of the life insurance payout. That would secure our retirement and still leave plenty for you and Lily. I repeated the words slowly, ensuring I understood them. You want 50% of my widowed daughter's support to secure your retirement? My mother flinched, but my father remained unperturbed. Now, Rachel, there's no need to be emotional about this. It's just practical financial planning. And we did come to the funeral. My voice dripped with sarcasm. How generous of you to attend my husband's funeral. We raised you, Rachel, my mother interjected. We paid for your college education. We helped with the down payment on your first house. I think we deserve some consideration now that you've come into money. Come into money? I echoed, my voice rising in disbelief. My husband died. I didn't win the lottery. I lost the love of my life, the father of my child, and you're treating it like I hit some financial jackpot. My father's expression hardened, but he still didn't seem to get it. There's no need to be dramatic. Kevin knew the risks with his heart condition. He should have taken better care of himself. And now that he's gone, it's just practical to discuss how his assets should be distributed. Family should help. Family, he added, his words like a final, callous justification. In that moment, something inside me snapped. The grief that had left me numb and passive for 2 weeks suddenly crystallized into a sharp, unrelenting clarity. Get out, I said quietly, my voice trembling with anger and hurt. Rachel, be reasonable, my mother began, her voice taking on a pleading tone. Get out of my house. I screamed, my anger flooding out in a wave so intense it physically propelled me to my feet. How dare you come here, asking for Kevin's money? How dare you blame him for dying? He was worth 100 of you, and you couldn't even be bothered to comfort your own daughter when she was breaking apart. My parents looked genuinely shocked at my outburst. They had never seen me truly angry before. They'd always raised me to be accommodating, to avoid conflict, to be the good daughter while Sophia got to be the demanding one. We're only asking for what's fair, my father said stiffly, standing up and straightening his shoulders. We're your parents, Rachel. We deserve respect. Respect is earned, I replied, my voice shaking but firm. And you've earned none. Now get out before Lily comes home and hears what kind of people her grandparents really are. They left in a huff, my mother muttering something about me being ungrateful and my father grumbling about reconsidering our relationship. I slammed the door behind them and sank to the floor, trembling with rage and hurt. Later that afternoon, when I picked Lily up from school, she seemed more withdrawn than usual. In the car, she finally spoke up. Mommy, why were Grandma and Grandpa at our house today? Her innocent question pierced my heart. I sighed deeply, the weight of the situation crushing me. Did you see them? I asked. She nodded. Mrs. Wilson let me go to the bathroom during math, and I saw their car from the school window. Did they bring something for us? She asked, her voice filled with hope. The innocent question broke me all over again. No, sweetie. I replied quietly. They just came to talk to me about some grown-up things. Lily didn't seem entirely convinced. Did they ask about Daddy's money? She asked, surprising me with her perception. My stomach twisted. What makes you say that? I asked gently. Lily looked down at her hands. I heard Grandpa at the funeral telling Uncle James that we would get lots of money because Daddy died. Is that true? The fact that my 8-year-old daughter had overheard such a conversation made me physically ill. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. Lily, your daddy made sure we would be taken care of. Yes, but money doesn't make up for not having him here with us. She nodded wisely, as if she understood. I would give all the money in the world to have Daddy back. Me too, baby, I whispered, my heart breaking. Me too. That night, I called Marcus, who had returned to Japan but was planning to come back for an extended stay during his summer break to help us adjust. I told him about my parents' visit and their demand. Are you kidding me? Marcus exploded on the other end of the line. They want half of Kevin's life insurance? That's insane. I know, I said softly, the familiar ache of missing Kevin intensifying. I still can't believe they actually asked, but I'm worried they might not let it go. My father can be very stubborn when he thinks he deserves something. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Kevin talked to me about his financial planning, you know. He was very thorough. He wanted to make sure Lily would be taken care of through college and beyond if anything ever happened to him. He would be furious about your parents trying to take that security away from her. I know, I said softly, swallowing back tears. I think I need to talk to Thomas about the legal situation just to be prepared. Good idea, Marcus agreed. And Rachel, don't let them manipulate you. Kevin protected you and Lily for a reason. The next day, I met with Thomas, Kevin's friend from law school, who had handled our estate planning. He was sympathetic but not surprised by my parents' behavior. Unfortunately, I see this kind of thing more often than you'd think, he said, reviewing Kevin's will and insurance documents. But I can assure you everything is airtight. Kevin designated you as the sole beneficiary of his life insurance and retirement accounts. Your parents have absolutely no legal claim to any of it. Could they contest the will? I asked, worried. Thomas shook his head. The will is clear and properly executed. Even if they tried, they have no grounds. Kevin was of sound mind when it was made, and parents have no automatic right to inherit from adult children, especially when there's a spouse and child. You're safe. His reassurance should have made me feel better. But as I left Thomas's office, my phone buzzed with a string of text messages from my parents and surprisingly from Sophia, from my father. We need to discuss this situation like adults. Call me. From my mother. I raised you better than this, Rachel. Family comes first. From Sophia. You've always been selfish, but this is low, even for you. Mom and Dad deserve better. The hypocrisy of Sophia, who had barely looked up from her phone during Kevin's funeral, accusing me of being selfish, was almost laughable. Almost. If it weren't so painful. That evening, as Lily and I were eating dinner, my father called. When I didn't answer, he left a voicemail demanding a family meeting at their house on Sunday afternoon. This concerns all of us, Rachel. Be there at 2 o'clock. Bring Lily. I set the phone down, the last of my appetite disappearing. Involving Lily in this mess was the last thing I wanted, but I figured it was time to face them and have everything out in the open, maybe even make a final break if needed. Was that Grandpa? Lily asked, pushing her peas around her plate. Yes, I said quietly. He wants us to come over on Sunday. Lily was silent for a moment, then asked, do we have to go? The fact that my daughter, who had once loved visiting her grandparents, now seemed reluctant spoke volumes. I think we should, I said carefully. Sometimes it's important to face difficult situations directly. She nodded, a look of determination crossing her small face, a look so much like Kevin's. Okay, but can I bring something with me? She asked, her eyes focused with a sudden intensity. Sure, I said, curious. What kind of idea? Lily just smiled secretively. Something Daddy taught me about standing up for yourself. I agreed, wondering what my 8-year-old had planned, but trusting that whatever it was, it came from the strong values Kevin had instilled in her. The next few days felt like a slow build toward the confrontation. Despite everything, grief still weighed heavily on me, but now I was also angry at my parents, at their blatant disregard for my pain, at their audacity to ask for money. There were moments when the bitterness felt like it might overwhelm me, but I focused on Lily, on our life together, on the love Kevin had left behind. On Saturday, I decided to review Kevin's financial documents more thoroughly, wanting to be fully informed before facing my parents. Kevin had been meticulous about our finances, keeping everything organized in a filing cabinet in our home office. As I went through the folders, I found a sealed envelope with my name on it, Kevin's handwriting on the front. My hands shook. As I opened it, the letter was dated just 3 months before his death, around the time of his last physical. My dearest Rachel, it began. If you're reading this, it means the doctor's concerns about my heart were more serious than I let on. I didn't want to worry you, but I've updated our will and insurance policies just in case. Everything goes to you, with provisions for Lily's education and future. Use it well, live fully, and know that my greatest joy was being your husband and Lily's father. I broke down sobbing, both devastated that Kevin had kept his health concerns from me and deeply moved by his foresight and care. He had known there was a risk and had prepared for it while trying to spare me the worry. It was so typically him, both frustrating and loving in equal measure. The letter continued, outlining specifics about the insurance policies and investments, but there was one section that caught my attention. I've set up a separate trust for Lily that can't be accessed until she's 25. Except for educational expenses. This is important, Rachel. Your father has approached me twice about investment opportunities that were thinly veiled requests for money. I declined politely, but he seemed to think my death would create an opportunity for him to access funds through you. Don't let that happen. Your parents have made poor financial choices for years, and while I sympathize, Lily's future cannot be compromised to bail them out. The revelation that my father had already tried to get money from Kevin while he was still alive added another layer of betrayal. Kevin had protected me from this knowledge, probably trying to preserve my relationship with my parents. Even in this, he had put my feelings first. Armed with this new information, I called Thomas again to verify that the trust Kevin mentioned was indeed secure from any claims. He assured me it was. It's ironclad, Rachel, and you should bring a copy of Kevin's letter to the family meeting. It's not legally necessary, but it might be useful if they try to pressure you emotionally. Sunday morning came, and I felt an undeniable sense of impending confrontation. Lily, unusually quiet, as we got dressed, was still holding on to that manila envelope with a secretive look on her face. She refused to tell me what was inside, but I trusted whatever it was. It came from the strong foundation Kevin had built in her daughter. As we drove to my parents' house, I noticed several cars in the driveway. Apparently, they'd invited an audience, my aunts and uncles, perhaps thinking that I'd be more likely to give in if I had to face the extended family. Ready? I asked, my hand on the ignition. Lily nodded, her face solemn beyond her years. I'm ready, Mom. Don't worry. We walked up to the front door, hand in hand, drawing strength from each other. Before I could ring the bell, the door swung open to reveal my mother, dressed formally, her face set in a practiced expression of concern. Rachel, Lily, come in. Everyone's waiting in the living room, she said, her voice as rehearsed as her smile. We followed her through the hallway into the living room where I had spent countless childhood holidays. Now, it felt like walking into an ambush. My father was sitting in his recliner, positioned like a judge presiding over a court. Sophia was perched on the arm of the sofa, scrolling through her phone. The rest of my extended family sat around, including my Aunt Rita, Uncle James, and my father's brother, Uncle Terry, with his wife Barbara. Thank you for coming, my father said, his voice formal, as if this were a business meeting instead of a family gathering. We have important matters to discuss. I remained standing, keeping Lily close to my side. Before we start, I want to be clear that whatever you have to say, you can say it in front of Lily. She has a right to know what's happening in her family. My mother frowned, looking uncomfortable. Rachel, this is hardly appropriate conversation for a child. If it's not appropriate for her to hear, I replied, my voice steady, then it's not appropriate for you to be asking. My father cleared his throat. Fine. Let's get right to the point. Your mother and I have been discussing the family financial situation, and as you know, we helped you considerably throughout your life, from college tuition to the down payment on your first house. I bit back the urge to remind him that they hadn't paid the full amount for my college education, that Sophia had always been the favorite, and that I had worked hard for everything I had. But now wasn't the time for old grievances. I kept my mouth shut. We believe, my father continued, that given the substantial windfall you've received from Kevin's passing, it's only fair that you assist the family in return. We're proposing a distribution that would secure our retirement, my mother added, and also provide some assistance to Sophia, who, as you know, has struggled financially as an artist. Sophia finally looked up from her phone long enough to give me a smug smile, as if my husband's death were some cosmic balancing of the scales between us. I've prepared a breakdown of what we consider a fair distribution, my father said, handing me a printed document. As you'll see, we're suggesting that 50% of the life insurance proceeds be directed to your mother and me, with an additional 15% allocated to Sophia. I glanced at the document, scanning the details. They had somehow discovered the exact value of Kevin's life insurance policy, likely through Uncle James, who worked in the insurance industry. You want 65% of the money that was meant to secure my daughter's future after losing her father? I stated flatly. Money that Kevin earned and specifically designated for us? My mother interjected, her tone defensive. Family takes care of. Family, Rachel. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Family? I repeated, the word feeling like acid in my mouth. You couldn't even be bothered to leave Sophia's birthday party when my husband died. There was an uncomfortable silence in the room. My Aunt Rita shifted uncomfortably in her seat, looking embarrassed. At least someone had the decency to recognize how inappropriate this was. Now, Rachel, my father said, his voice condescending. We've apologized for the timing of everything, but you have to understand we had guests in town. We couldn't just leave. Actually, you could have, I said, my voice low but steady. You chose not to. Sophia finally spoke up, cutting in with a dismissive tone. The point is, you're suddenly rich while the rest of us are struggling. Mom and Dad sacrificed for you your whole life. They deserve security in their old age. Security? I asked, my voice rising despite my best efforts to stay calm. What about Lily's security? Do you think Kevin died so you could buy a new car or go on cruises? That money is for his daughter's future. My father stood up, his face flushed with anger. You listen here, Rachel. We raised you. We fed you. We clothed you. You owe us respect and consideration. Respect? I laughed bitterly. You haven't shown me or Lily an ounce of respect or genuine concern since Kevin died. All you care about is what you can get from us. That's not true, my mother protested weakly. We care about you, Rachel. We're just trying to be practical. Practical? I said, my voice shaking with fury. Practical would be asking how your granddaughter is coping with losing her father. Practical would be offering to help with meals, or housework, or emotional support. Not this vulture behavior. The room fell silent again. Uncle Terry looked uncomfortably at the floor, while Aunt Barbara glared at my father, clearly as appalled as I was. And then, in the middle of the silence, Lily stepped forward, still holding that manila envelope tightly in her hands. I have something to say, she announced, her voice clear and strong, startling everyone into silence. My mother attempted to smile condescendingly at her. Sweetie, the adults are talking about important things right now. But Lily didn't back down. She stood her ground, her voice channeling Kevin's quiet confidence. This is important too. It's about my daddy and what he would want. All eyes turned to her. This small figure standing so bravely in the center of adult conflict. Even Sophia put down her phone. Daddy taught me that when people show you who they really are, you should believe them, Lily said, her voice only slightly trembling. And when people only come around when they want something, they're not really family. She turned to face my parents directly. You didn't come to see us when Daddy died. You didn't help Mom when she was sad every night. You didn't ask me if I was okay or if I needed anything. You only came when you wanted money. The raw truth from an 8-year-old's mouth seemed to land differently than when I had said similar things. My mother's carefully composed face crumpled slightly, while my father stood frozen, at a complete loss for words. Lily opened the envelope, pulled out a sheet of paper, and handed it to my father. It was a child's drawing, but as I glimpsed it over his shoulder, I saw it was designed to look like an invoice. At the top, in Lily's careful handwriting, it read, "Bill for real love and support." The list below had items like, being there when Daddy died, oh not provided, helping Mom when she was sad, oh not provided, hugging me when I cried for Daddy, oh not provided, being real grandparents, priceless but not paid. At the bottom, in bold letters, was the total. Oh, that's why you came, right? For money, Lily said quietly, as if this simple, honest truth was enough to expose their actions for what they really were. This is what you earned. The silence in the room was absolute. My father's hands trembled as he held the paper. My mother began to cry, whether from shame or manipulation, I couldn't tell. Sophia stared at Lily with an expression of shock, as if seeing her niece for the first time. I think we're done here, I said quietly, my voice barely above a whisper. Don't contact us again unless it's to apologize and show genuine change. Lily deserves better grandparents than you've been, and I deserve better parents. I took Lily's hand and led her out, leaving my stunned family behind. As we walked out of my parents' house, I felt a strange mix of sorrow and liberation. We had lost more than Kevin. We had lost the illusion of a supportive extended family. But in that loss, there was also clarity. We were free to rebuild our lives without toxic obligations. Lily and I didn't speak much on the drive home. She sat quietly beside me, the weight of what had just happened settling over both of us. When we got home, I hugged her tightly. You were incredibly brave, I said, my voice filled with pride. I'm so proud of you. She hugged me back. Daddy always said we have to stand up for what's right, even when it's hard. Was I right, Mom? She asked, looking up at me with wide, trusting eyes. Yes, baby, I whispered, tears streaming down my face. You were absolutely right. The drive to my parents' house had been tense. Lily had been unusually quiet, holding her manila envelope tightly in her hands. I had been so focused on preparing for the confrontation with my parents that I hadn't paid enough attention to what Lily was planning. Now, as we drove away, I felt a mix of pride in her courage and sadness that she had to grow up so fast. How did you come up with that idea for the bill? I asked her, trying to understand what had driven her to create it. Lily gazed out the window for a moment before answering. Daddy and I were watching a movie once where someone gave an invoice to a mean person. Daddy said sometimes people need to see on paper what they're really worth. Her voice cracked slightly. I think Grandpa and Grandma needed to see that. They haven't been worth much to us lately. Her wisdom, so much like Kevin's, made my heart ache with both love and loss. Your daddy would be so proud of you today, I said softly, reaching over to squeeze her hand. So am I added, my own emotions making it hard to speak. That evening, when Lily went to bed, I found myself in the kitchen, lost in thought. My phone buzzed, and I saw a flood of messages from my family. They were furious, trying to guilt-trip me, but I didn't open any of them. I didn't need to. This wasn't a negotiation, it was a boundary being firmly established. Whatever fallout came from this confrontation would have to wait until Lily and I had processed what had happened. Marcus was waiting for us on our porch when we got home. He'd flown in early from Japan, wanting to surprise us, and Ellen had given him the spare key. How did it go? He asked, embracing us both. His smile, so much like Kevin's, was both comforting and painful. Aunt Lily was amazing, Lily declared before I could say anything. She made Grandpa see that he was being mean about Daddy's money. Marcus raised an eyebrow at me. Aunt Lily? I smiled despite everything. Apparently I've been promoted from Mom to Aunt Lily for bravery points. Over dinner, we told Marcus everything that had happened at my parents' house. His expression darkened when I described my father's distribution plan, but his face softened with pride when Lily explained her invoice idea. That's pure Kevin. Right there, he said, ruffling Lily's hair. Creative problem solving with just the right amount of well-deserved guilt trip. Later that night, after Lily went to bed, Marcus and I sat in the kitchen, drinking tea and talking about next steps. They'll try again, he warned me. People like your parents don't give up easily when money is involved. I nodded, thinking of my father's stubbornness. I know, but I'm not going to give in, not just because it's wrong, but because it would betray Kevin's explicit wishes. Have you thought about what this means for your relationship with them going forward? Marcus asked gently. It was a question I had been avoiding, but now, in the stillness of the night, I had to confront it. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to cut them off completely. They've shown their true colors so clearly, but another part of me wonders if that's fair to Lily. They're her only grandparents. Are bad grandparents better than no grandparents? Marcus countered. Kevin's parents adored Lily. They were there for her in ways my own parents hadn't been, and they put her needs first. His parents were grieving too, but they still managed to show up for us. Quality over quantity, right? Marcus added. They love Lily. They just don't get it yet. Your parents. Well, you know. I nodded. Marcus had a point. Diana and Robert, Kevin's parents, were our family now too. Their love for Lily felt like a direct extension of their love for their son. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The next morning, I saw 8 missed calls from my mother and 3 from my father. There were also several text messages ranging from angry accusations to tearful apologies that seemed more like manipulation than genuine remorse. I decided to respond to just one message from my mother. We need to talk about what happened. I replied simply, there's nothing to talk about until you can acknowledge the harm you've caused and show real change. Lily and I need time and space. Then, I blocked their numbers. It was a temporary measure, just to give us some breathing room. I also emailed Thomas to inform him of what had transpired and asked him to be on alert for any legal moves my parents might attempt. Though Thomas had assured me they had no grounds for any claims, I wanted to be prepared. Over the next few days, my parents tried various approaches to reestablish contact. They sent flowers with apology cards that vaguely referenced family misunderstandings. They attempted to reach me through mutual friends. My father even showed up at my workplace but was turned away by security when I refused to see him. It was my Aunt Barbara, Uncle Terry's wife, who provided the most unexpected support. She called from her personal phone, which I hadn't blocked, and asked if we could meet for coffee. I want you to know that not everyone in the family supports what Brad and Carol did, she told me when we met. Terry and I were horrified. We only went to that meeting because they told us it was about planning a memorial scholarship in Kevin's name. Her honesty was a relief, and it helped to know that not all of my extended family had been complicit in my parents' scheme. A week after the confrontation, a formal letter arrived from my father. It was written on his business stationery, as if to lend weight to his words. The letter stated that unless I was willing to come to a reasonable financial arrangement with them, they would be forced to reconsider our relationship with Lily and me entirely. It was meant to be threatening, but to me, it felt like permission to move forward without the burden of toxic relationships. I filed the letter with Thomas, just in case it was ever needed as evidence of their intentions. For now, though, it only confirmed what I already knew. My parents were more concerned about money than they were about their own daughter's grief. 2 weeks after the confrontation, my mother tried a new tactic. She showed up at Lily's school during pickup time. Fortunately, I had already informed the school about the situation, and they called me immediately. By the time I arrived, the principal had politely, but firmly, asked my mother to leave, reminding her that only authorized individuals could interact with students. Standing in the school parking lot, my mother looked smaller somehow, less imposing than she ever had. When she saw me, she blinked, and her face twisted with a mix of confusion and anger. You're turning everyone against us, she accused. No, Mom, I replied evenly. Your actions are doing that. I was done. There was nothing left to say to her. Please don't come to Lily's school again, I said, my voice firm. If you want to rebuild a relationship with us, it needs to start with respect for our boundaries. We're your parents, she protested, tears forming in her eyes. You can't just cut us out of your life. I'm not cutting you out, I clarified. I'm asking you to step back and reconsider how you want to be part of our lives. Do you want to be the grandparents who support and love Lily unconditionally? Or do you want to be the ones who saw her father's death as a financial opportunity? The choice is yours, but there are consequences either way. She didn't have an answer for that, and we parted without any resolution. It was the last direct contact I had with either of my parents for nearly 2 months. During that time, I focused on Lily. I focused on starting to build our new normal without Kevin, but with the support of those who truly cared for us. Marcus stayed with us for 3 months, his presence a daily reminder of Kevin in the best possible way. He taught Lily to play chess, something Kevin had planned to do with her. He helped me sort through Kevin's belongings when I was finally ready, sharing stories and memories that made the painful task bearable. Kevin's parents, Diana and Robert, also spent time with us, visiting often and always with love and care. For Lily, Diana taught her to bake Kevin's favorite cookies, maintaining a connection to her father through shared activities. Robert took her fishing, patiently showing her how to tie the knots Kevin had learned from him decades earlier. They had their own grief, but they also knew how to show up for us. Meanwhile, news of my parents' behavior had spread through the Family grapevine. Aunt Rita called to apologize for her presence at the family meeting, explaining that she had been told it was a gathering to discuss supporting us. Uncle James, who had initially seemed aligned with my father, sent a card, expressing his regret for not speaking up during the confrontation. Even Sophia eventually sent an email that, though it stopped short of a full apology, acknowledged that the timing of my parents' financial requests had been insensitive. It wasn't much, but it was the first time in our adult lives that Sophia had admitted any wrongdoing. 3 months after Kevin's death, on what would have been our 13th wedding anniversary, I received another letter from my parents. This one came in a plain envelope, handwritten rather than typed on business letterhead. It was the first communication from them that felt potentially genuine. Dear Rachel and Lily, it began. We've spent these past weeks reflecting on our behavior and the pain we've caused you during an already unbearable time of loss. There are no excuses for what we did. We allowed greed and self-interest to override our love and responsibility as parents and grandparents. We failed you both, and we failed Kevin's memory. The letter continued with specific acknowledgments of their actions, from missing the funeral to the attempted financial grab, without the vague language of their previous apologies. They didn't ask for forgiveness or for contact to be resumed, only expressing hope that someday we might have the opportunity to see that they had changed through their actions, not just words. I read the letter several times, trying to gauge its sincerity. I showed it to Marcus before deciding whether to share it with Lily. It seems different from their other attempts, Marcus observed cautiously. Less manipulative, more accountable. But ultimately, it's your call whether to believe it. I tucked the letter away, not yet ready to make a decision about how or whether to respond. The wound was still too fresh, the betrayal too profound. Time would tell if their remorse was genuine or just another strategy for getting what they wanted. For now, Lily and I were focusing on healing. We were learning how to rebuild our life without Kevin, but with his love and values as our foundation. As Marcus prepared to return to Japan with plans to visit again soon, he helped me organize a memorial gathering on Kevin's birthday. Unlike the funeral, which had been somber and formal, this gathering was meant to celebrate Kevin's life. We held it in our backyard, with his favorite barbecue food, music, and lots of laughter. Friends and colleagues shared funny stories about Kevin. His parents brought photo albums from his childhood, and Lily presented a memory book she had created, filled with ticket stubs, notes, and mementos from activities she had shared with her dad. Notably absent from the gathering were my parents and Sophia. They had not been invited. It was a boundary I needed to maintain, a way to create a safe space for grief and remembrance without the tension that their presence would bring. As the gathering wound down and guests began to leave, Lily tugged at my sleeve. Mom, can we invite Grandma and Grandpa next time? She asked quietly. Which grandparents? I asked, though I knew exactly who she meant. Mom's parents, she clarified. The ones who asked for money. Her question caught me off guard. The innocence and compassion in her voice reminded me so much of Kevin. I think Daddy would want us to give them another chance, if they're really sorry. Her compassion was so much like Kevin's. It brought tears to my eyes. We'll see, I said softly. If they show us they've really changed, maybe next time. It wasn't forgiveness exactly, not yet, but it was an opening, a possibility. Maybe someday we could rebuild something with them. For now, that was enough. The envelope confrontation had been a turning point in our lives. In the immediate aftermath, the division in my extended family was stark and painful. Some relatives sided firmly with my parents, viewing me as the ungrateful daughter who refused to help family. Others, though, recognized the inappropriate nature of my parents' demands and offered quiet support. My Aunt Barbara became an unexpected ally. She called regularly to check on Lily and me, and occasionally passed along family news without any pressure or judgment. Uncle Terry, though less demonstrative, showed his support by sending Lily books and science kits, remembering her interests in a way my parents rarely had. The most surprising reaction came from my cousin Jennifer, Sophia's daughter, who was in her early 20s. About a month after the confrontation, she reached out via email. I've always seen how differently Grandma and Grandpa treated you compared to Mom, she wrote. What they did after Kevin died was inexcusable, and I want you to know that not everyone in the family thinks you're wrong for standing your ground. Her message meant more than she could know. Validation from an unexpected source that I wasn't crazy or selfish for protecting Lily's future. my parents' initial reaction to being cut off was a campaign of manipulation. They enlisted family members to plead their case, sent guilt-inducing emails, and even attempted to use Lily's school as a point of contact. When these efforts failed, they shifted tactics to more direct threats, suggesting they might contest the will despite having no legal grounds to do so. Thomas, Kevin's lawyer friend, responded to these threats with a firmly worded legal letter, outlining the baselessness of any potential claims and the possible consequences of harassment. After that, the direct pressure eased, but the emotional fallout continued. Throughout this difficult period, I was surprised by how many people stepped forward to support us. Kevin's colleagues established a college fund for Lily, separate from what Kevin had already arranged. My neighbor Ellen, a retired teacher, helped Lily with homework when grief made concentration difficult. Even my boss at the architectural firm where I worked as an office manager showed unexpected compassion, allowing me flexible hours to attend grief counseling with Lily. 6 months after Kevin's death, Marcus returned for another extended visit. This time with news: "I'm transferring to the university here," he announced one evening at dinner. "I've been offered a position in the linguistics department starting next semester." "Wait, you're moving back to the States?" I asked, surprised. Marcus had been living in Japan for nearly a decade. He nodded, glancing at Lily, who was practically bouncing with excitement. "Kevin made me promise," Marcus said softly. "When you were pregnant with Lily, he made me swear that if anything ever happened to him, I would be there for you both. It's easier to keep that promise if I'm in the same country. Ideally, the same city." His decision to move back was a huge gesture. It meant so much to me, to know that he was willing to make such a sacrifice for us. He didn't try to replace Kevin, but his presence kept Kevin's memory alive for Lily in the most beautiful way. On Lily's 9th birthday, 4 months after the confrontation with my parents, I received another letter from them. This time, it came with a modest gift for Lily, a book about astronomy that actually aligned with her interests. It was the first time they had shown any real thoughtfulness. The letter acknowledged the hurt they had caused and asked, not for money or forgiveness, but simply for the opportunity to see Lily on her birthday, even if just for 15 minutes in a public place with me present the entire time. After discussing it with Lily, who was cautiously open to the idea, I arranged for a brief meeting at her favorite ice cream shop. I set clear boundaries in my response. This was not a resumption of normal relations, but a tentative first step that would depend entirely on their behavior. The meeting was awkward but surprisingly free of drama. My parents seemed genuinely chastened, focusing entirely on Lily asking appropriate questions about school, her interests, and avoiding any mention of money or the past conflict. They had clearly rehearsed their approach, but the effort itself showed a willingness to change that I hadn't expected. As we were leaving, my father asked quietly, "Could we possibly do this again sometime? Maybe next month?" It was the lack of entitlement in his request, the understanding that access to his granddaughter was a privilege to be earned rather than a right to be demanded, that made me consider it. "We'll see," I replied. "I'll let you know." That tentative beginning led to carefully structured, occasional visits over the next few months. My parents remained on probation, so to speak, but they consistently respected the boundaries I established. They never mentioned money again, never tried to see Lily without my permission, and gradually demonstrated, through actions rather than words, that they understood the damage they had done. A year after Kevin's death, we held another memorial service on the anniversary of his passing. Unlike the confrontation several months earlier, I chose to invite my parents, making it clear that this was a significant test of their commitment to rebuilding our relationship. To my relief, they came. They were appropriately somber and supportive, bringing a photo album of Kevin at family gatherings that I hadn't even known existed. They stayed in the background, not making the day about them or their relationship with me, but simply honoring Kevin's memory alongside everyone else who had loved him. After the service, my mother approached me cautiously, almost hesitantly. "We've been seeing a family therapist," she confessed, her voice low, "trying to understand where we went so wrong, not just after Kevin died, but throughout your life. It's been illuminating." It wasn't an overnight transformation, and there were still awkward moments, old patterns that emerged occasionally. But the effort was consistent, and over time, a new relationship began to take shape, one based on mutual respect rather than obligation or expectation. Sophia took longer to come around. Her initial reaction to being cut off from access to Kevin's money was anger and resentment, which she manifested in nasty social media posts and attempts to turn family members against me. But as my parents gradually reformed their behavior, her position became increasingly untenable. Eventually, after nearly a year of minimal contact, she reached out with a genuine apology. "I've been jealous of you my whole life," she admitted during a tense coffee meeting. "You were always the smart one, the responsible one. When Kevin died and left you financially secure, it just amplified every insecurity I've ever had. It doesn't excuse what I did, but I want you to know I'm working on it." It was perhaps the most honest conversation we'd ever had as sisters. It didn't immediately repair our relationship, but it opened the door to the possibility of a healthier connection in the future. As for Lily and me, the journey through grief continued. The sharp, constant pain of early loss gradually transformed into something more manageable, a sadness that could coexist with moments of joy and hope. Lily still had nights when she cried for her father, but she also had days filled with laughter and normal 9-year-old concerns. With Thomas's help, I established a foundation in Kevin's name that provided financial education for underserved communities, something he had been passionate about. Running the foundation gave me purpose beyond surviving day to day, and it connected me with people who shared Kevin's values. On the second anniversary of Kevin's death, I took Lily to his favorite spot by the lake. We sat on a bench, watching the water together, remembering him. "Mom," Lily said thoughtfully, breaking the silence, "I think the envelope I gave Grandpa and Grandma helped them." I looked at her, surprised. "What makes you say that?" "Well," she said, picking up a stone and skipping it across the water, "the way Kevin had taught her, they're different now. They listen more. They ask about my feelings. They remember what books I like." Tears filled my eyes. "Your daddy always said, sometimes people need to see themselves clearly before they can change." "Yeah," Lily said softly. "Daddy was right." I put my arm around her, grateful for the small, precious moment. "Your dad was very wise. I still miss him every day," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I think he'd be happy about how we're doing. Don't you?" I squeezed her hand. "Yes, baby. I think he'd be very proud of us both." The truth was, losing Kevin had revealed exactly who in our lives was truly family and who was not. Some relationships had been irreparably damaged, while others had deepened in ways I never expected. New connections had formed, creating a support system built on genuine care rather than obligation. My parents were now cautious figures in our lives, working to earn back trust one respectful interaction at a time. Marcus had become a constant loving presence, an uncle who took his role seriously. Kevin's parents remained devoted grandparents, their love for Lily a direct extension of their love for their son. Lily and I had each other, bonded not just by grief, but by our shared experience of standing up for ourselves and discovering our own strength in the process. The inheritance that my parents had so coveted went untouched, except for living expenses and Lily's education fund. The material security Kevin provided was valuable, but his true legacy was in the values he instilled in us, the courage he inspired, and the love that continued to guide our choices. As we walked back from the lake that day, Lily slipped her hand into mine. "I think the best way to remember Daddy," she said, "is to be kind but strong, like he was. To help people, but not let them take advantage." "That's exactly right," I agreed, squeezing her hand. "That's how we honor him every day." The journey of grief isn't linear. Healing doesn't mean forgetting. There are still days when the absence of Kevin feels like a physical wound, when I reach for him in my sleep or start to tell him something before remembering he isn't there. But those moments no longer define our